God hid you on purpose, and the people who couldn't find you had no idea they were doing you a favor. There is something that happened in your life, a season, maybe several seasons, where you essentially disappeared. Not physically. You were still showing up, still moving through the days, still present in the rooms you were supposed to be in. But something about you went quiet in a way that even you couldn't fully explain. Like a light that was still on but no longer visible from the street. Like a frequency that was still broadcasting, but on a channel most people around you couldn't receive. And you have spent a significant amount of time wondering what that meant. Whether something was wrong with you. Whether you had somehow disqualified yourself from the life you were supposed to be living. Whether the silence around your name, the absence of recognition, the strange invisibility that seemed to follow you no matter how hard you worked, whether all of that was evidence that you had missed something irreversible. You did not miss anything. You were being hidden. And before this is over, you are going to understand why that hiddenness was not heaven's oversight. It was heaven's architecture. Stay with me, because this changes everything. Section 1. The weight of invisibility. You know what invisibility actually feels like, and it is nothing like what people who have never experienced it imagine. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It is quiet in a way that is almost worse than noise. It is the meeting where your idea lands silently and someone else says the same thing 20 minutes later and the room erupts. It is the consistent experience of being present without being seen, of contributing without being credited, of existing in spaces where the energy moves around you rather than toward you, and you cannot figure out why, and nobody can explain it. And eventually you stop asking because the asking itself starts to feel embarrassing. It is the birthday that fewer people remembered than the year before. The group chat that kept going after you stopped responding. The invitation that stopped coming without anyone announcing why. The slow, undramatic, almost imperceptible way that the circle around you contracted and nobody seemed to notice. And part of you wondered if that was because nobody was looking. You felt it but could never put it into words. There was something about the season you were in that felt like standing behind glass. You could see everything. You could hear everything. But something between you and the world was muffling the connection, softening the signal, creating a distance that effort alone could not close. And here is what invisibility does to a person who was born knowing they were meant to be seen. It makes you question the knowing. That is the cruelest part of it. Not the invisibility itself, but what the invisibility does to the vision inside you. Because you did not just feel called to something ordinary. You felt it from early on, that specific, undeniable, sometimes inconvenient sense that your life was meant to mean something, that you were carrying something the world needed, that your voice, your story, your perspective mattered in ways that went beyond what your immediate environment was affirming. And then the silence came, and the silence made you wonder if the knowing was a lie. It was not a lie. The silence was not contradiction. The silence was construction. And what was being built inside you during the years that nobody was watching is what your entire future is going to stand on. Section 2. Why God moved you out of sight. There is a principle about exposure that most people never learn until it is too late. Exposure before the right time does not accelerate growth. It interrupts it. It pulls what is not yet finished into a light that it cannot withstand. It invites pressure that has not yet been prepared for. It creates expectations that the incomplete version of what you are carrying cannot meet. And when that happens, when something is revealed before it is ready, the damage is not just to the moment. The damage reaches into the future and rearranges what was supposed to be there. Heaven understood something about you that you did not yet understand about yourself. That what was growing inside you was too important to risk to premature exposure. Think about how the natural world handles its most extraordinary things. The seed does not begin visible. It goes into the ground, into darkness, into hiddenness, into a place where nothing appears to be happening and everything essential happens there. The root system, which is the entire foundation of everything the plant will ever become, forms in the dark. Not in the sunlight, not on display, in the hidden place. And if you pulled that seed out of the ground 2 weeks in because you were impatient to see something, you would not be accelerating its growth. You would be ending it. You were that seed. You are still that seed. And the hiddenness you experienced was not the ground swallowing you. It was the ground holding you. This explains something that never made sense to you. Why, at certain moments when it seemed like you were on the verge of a breakthrough, when visibility seemed close, when an opportunity felt like it was finally opening, something would shift. A door would close, a connection would dissolve, a platform would disappear. A season of momentum would suddenly, inexplicably stop. And you would be left standing in the quiet again, confused, wondering what you did wrong. You did not do anything wrong. What you interpreted as a door closing was actually a roof going up. What felt like momentum stopping was actually the foundation going deeper. The moment that looked like a setback was heaven saying, "Not yet." Not because you weren't ready to begin, but because what is coming for you requires a root system that is not finished yet. And showing you to the world before that root system is complete would expose you to winds you would not yet be able to withstand. Most people will never experience this kind of precise, intentional divine protection. Most people are allowed to be seen before they are ready, and they spend their entire lives recovering from an exposure that happened too soon. But you, heaven kept you. Heaven covered you. Heaven said, "This one is too important to rush." Section 3, the envy you attracted and what it meant. Here is something that will feel uncomfortably accurate. Even in your hidden season, even when you felt invisible, even when recognition felt impossibly far away, there were people who sensed something in you that made them uneasy. You could feel it. The shift in the room when you walked in. The way certain people's energy changed around you in ways that didn't match the narrative of your invisibility. The strange dynamic of being overlooked by some while quietly unsettling others. Of being dismissed publicly while being watched privately. This is what others could not understand and could not explain, including you. Here is what was actually happening. The anointing on your life was leaking even during the season when it was supposed to be hidden. The gifting inside you was so undeniable that even when it wasn't being displayed, even when it wasn't being developed yet, even when you yourself were unsure of it, other people's spirits could detect it. And for people who are operating from a place of insecurity, there is nothing more threatening than someone who carries something real without even trying to show it. The envy you attracted in your hidden season was not about what you had achieved. It was about what you carried. And what you carried was so visible in the spirit that it made people respond to something they couldn't rationally explain. They were reacting to your potential before you had even actualized it. They were threatened by a version of you that hadn't even shown up yet. You sensed this before anyone told you. You knew, even when you couldn't justify it logically, that some of the resistance you experienced was connected to something in you rather than something about the situation. That the opposition wasn't really about the circumstance. That certain people in your life were responding to something they perceived in you that you hadn't yet fully perceived in yourself. That perception was correct. The fruit of your life had not yet appeared, but the root of your life, the depth of your character, the weight of your calling, the magnitude of what you were carrying was already registering in the spiritual atmosphere. And the resistance you experienced during your hidden season was not evidence that you were wrong about your destiny. It was, in its own strange way, confirmation that you were right. The things that are most worth protecting attract the most opposition. That was not a coincidence in your life. That was a pattern. And the pattern was telling you something about the size of what was being protected. Section 4. What the hidden season was actually building, the major revelation. Pause here. I need you to receive this slowly. Everything you have been through in the season of hiddenness, everything you endured in the quiet, in the invisible, in the overlooked, was not happening to you. It was happening for you. And not in the generic, surface-level way that phrase is usually offered as comfort. In the most specific, architectural, intentional way you can possibly imagine. Your hidden season was building three things that you cannot build any other way. The first is character that outlasts applause. When you are celebrated, you learn how to perform. When you are hidden, you learn who you actually are. The years when nobody was watching forced you to make choices that had no audience, to maintain integrity when there was no reward for it, to keep going when there was no external reason to keep going, to remain faithful to something you believed in when absolutely nothing around you was confirming that belief. And the person who learns to operate without applause, the person who develops their character in hiddenness rather than in visibility, that person, when they finally step into the light, is not performing. They are simply being. And there is a power in that authenticity that no amount of performance training can replicate. The second thing your hidden season built is a depth of wisdom that only suffering creates. This is the hardest one to hear. But the seasons that cost you the most, the relationships that broke, the opportunities that dissolved, the years that felt like they were simply disappearing, every single one of them deposited something in you. A layer of understanding about people, about pain, about how things actually work beneath the surface. A wisdom that did not come from books or courses or mentors. It came from living through something and surviving it. And that kind of wisdom has a weight to it, a credibility, a realness that people recognize immediately when they encounter it. When you eventually stand in front of the people you were created to reach, they are not going to connect with a theory. They are going to connect with a testimony. And your hidden season wrote the testimony that your public season is going to need. The third thing, and this is the one that will rearrange something deep inside you, is an unshakable knowing about who you are that visibility, had it come earlier, would have prevented. Here is why. When recognition arrives before identity is solid, you build your sense of self on the recognition. And when the recognition shifts, when the applause gets quieter, when the numbers drop, when the crowd moves to the next thing, you go with it. You become dependent on external validation in a way that is almost impossible to break once it is established. But when you spend years in hiddenness, when you go through the long process of having to decide who you are without anyone telling you who you are, you build an identity that does not depend on what the room thinks of you. You develop a rootedness in yourself, in your calling, in your purpose, in your value, that external circumstances cannot shake, because you were never given the option of building it on anything else. Everything suddenly makes sense, doesn't it? The hiddenness was not taking something from you. It was giving you something that the visible season you were desperate for would have prevented you from receiving. It was building the exact foundation that what is coming for you is going to require. Section 5. The people who disappeared and why. There is something specific I need to address. Because there is a particular kind of pain in your hidden season that we have not named yet. The people who left. Not all of them dramatically. Some of them quietly. Some of them through a gradual drifting that you watched happen without fully understanding how to stop it. Friends who were there at the beginning of a chapter and simply weren't there by the end of it. Relationships you invested in deeply that dissolved in ways that didn't match the investment. People you thought were assigned to your journey who turned out to only be assigned to a portion of it, and whose departure felt like abandonment even when you knew, somewhere underneath the hurt, that it wasn't really about you. Only a chosen one understands this specific kind of grief, not the grief of a dramatic fallout, the grief of a slow, quiet disappearing, of looking around one day and realizing that the landscape of your relationships looks almost nothing like what it did a few years ago, of feeling like something about your hidden season made you harder to stay close to, like the depth you were going to required a solitude that pushed certain connections out of range. Here is the truth that will hurt before it heals. Some of those people were not supposed to come with you, not because they were bad, not because the connection wasn't real, but because where you are going requires a version of you that those relationships, had they continued, would have made more difficult to become. Every relationship carries a pull, a gravity. And the people who knew you before the hidden season, who were comfortable with the pre-hidden version of you, were, often without knowing it, creating a resistance to the transformation that the hidden season was trying to complete. Heaven sometimes removes people from your proximity not as punishment, but as permission. Permission for you to become someone those relationships would have subtly, lovingly, unintentionally prevented you from becoming. And the loneliness that came with their leaving, as real and as painful as it was, created a space that something more aligned with who you are becoming is already moving to fill. The connections that are coming for you in your next season are not replacements for what you lost. They are upgrades. They are people who are calibrated for who you are now, not who you were. People who will meet the version of you that the hidden season produced and recognize it immediately. People whose presence will feel less like work and more like home. People who are being prepared for you the same way you are being prepared for them. The disappearances were not the end of your story with community. They were the clearing of the path so that the right community could find you. Section 6. The moment heaven decides to reveal, there is a moment, a specific, appointed, heaven-determined moment, when the hidden season ends. Not because you finally did enough. Not because you earned your way out of the quiet. Not because you figured out the right formula or strategy or performance, but because the preparation reached completion. Because what was being built in the hidden place arrived at a fullness that the hidden place could no longer contain. because the seed that was forming in the dark had finally grown to the point where the ground itself could not hold it down. That moment is not something you manufacture. It is something you receive. And what I need you to hear, what I need you to actually believe rather than just intellectually acknowledge, is that this moment is closer for you than you have been allowing yourself to believe. You felt it before you came here today. There is something different about this particular season, something that you cannot fully articulate but that you cannot ignore either. A sense that something is shifting in the atmosphere around your life, that the walls that have held you in the quiet are beginning to develop cracks, that the silence that has surrounded you for so long is starting to carry a different quality, less like emptiness and more like anticipation. You sense this before anyone told you. The chosen ones who are approaching their moment of revelation almost always describe the same experience in the days and weeks before it arrives. A strange restlessness, a feeling of standing at the edge of something enormous without being able to see what it is. A sense of simultaneous readiness and terror. An awareness that something is about to change that is so deep it bypasses logic entirely and goes straight into the spirit. If that is where you are, if that is what you have been carrying and haven't had the language for, then what you are feeling is not anxiety. It is proximity. You are close enough to the revealing season that your spirit has already registered what your eyes cannot yet see. The hidden season always precedes the harvest, always, without exception. And the depth of the hiding determines the magnitude of what is revealed. The longer the hiddenness, the more significant the revealing. The deeper the quiet, the louder the declaration when it finally comes. The more invisible you were in the preparation, the more undeniable you will be in the manifestation. Your hiddenness was not proportional to your insignificance. It was proportional to the significance of what heaven was preparing to release through you. Section 7. What your revealing will look like. I want to paint a picture for you, not as fantasy, as prophecy grounded in the pattern of how heaven works. When your revealing season arrives, it is not going to look like a slow climb that eventually gets noticed. It is going to look like emergence, like something that was underneath the surface suddenly breaking through with a force that surprises even the people who knew you. Like a story that seemed to be going nowhere suddenly making complete and undeniable sense to everyone who witnesses it. The people who overlooked you in your hidden season are going to struggle to explain what they are seeing. Because what you are about to carry into visibility is not just success. It is a depth that success alone cannot account for. A wisdom that your age and experience don't seem to justify on paper. An authority in your voice and your presence that wasn't there before. Or rather, that was always there but is now no longer contained. A quality to your story that makes people lean forward without knowing why, stay longer than they planned, and feel something they did not come prepared to feel. That is what the hidden season produces in a person. Not just readiness, gravitas, the kind of weight that only comes from having been somewhere most people have never had to go. And here is what will set your revealing apart from ordinary success stories, your testimony. Because you were hidden when others were visible. Because you kept believing when the evidence said stop. Because you went through the invisible years without losing what was inside you. Your story is going to do something for people that polished success never could. It is going to reach the person who is currently in their hidden season, who is currently sitting in the quiet, wondering if they were wrong about their calling. And it is going to tell them, through the undeniable evidence of your life, that the hidden season is real and the revealing season is coming and the waiting was not wasted. Your breakthrough is not just for you. It was never just for you. The hidden season was producing not only the version of you that your destiny requires, but the story that other people's destinies require. You are going to become, for someone else, the proof that the hidden season is worth it. And that is a weight of purpose that only someone who went through exactly what you went through can carry.
Before I close, I need to speak directly to the place you are actually in, not the place you are performing for, not the place you are describing. When someone asks how you are doing, the actual place you are tried, not the kind of tried that sleep fix, the kind of tried that comes from carrying something heavy for a long time without being able to set it down, from believing in something you cannot prove to the people around you, from maintaining faith in a version that has not yet produced the visible evidence that would make the faith feel less costly. You are also, if you are honest, still hoping, still awake inside the tired, still finding on the morning when you could not justifiable, quite a reason to keep going that you cannot fully explain, still believing when at all the doubt and the weirdness and the comparison that what you have been sensing about your life is true. That hope, that present, irrational, unlikable hope is not weakness dressed up as faith. It is the single signal from your spirit that the story is not over, that the chapter you are in the is not the conclusion, that what looks like an ending from inside. It is actually a threshold, and you are standing on the edge of a door that is about to open wider than anything that closed behind you. Your preparation was not wasted, not a single day of it, not the years that felt empty, not the seasons that seemed to take everything and nothing back, not the relationship that broke, not the opportunity that dissolved, not the morning you had to choose to keep going when every visible thing said stop. All of it, every last piece of it, was disappointed into the person of you have become. And the person you have become is exactly who your next season needs you to be. Your uniqueness was intentional. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you have always operated on a frequency that most people around you couldn't quite receive. None of that was a design flaw. It was a design feature. Heaven built you especially for a purpose that required exactly that kind of wiring, and the world that was not yet fully encountered what you carry has no idea what is has been waiting for. Your story is still unfolding. The best chapters are ahead, not behind. The most significant moment of your life are not in your past. They are in a future that is moving toward you are right now, that has been moving toward you this entire time, that is closer than you have allowed yourself to believe. The hidden season is ending. The revealing season is coming. And when it is arrives, It will be worth every single year you spend in the quiet. Hold on. Do not leave your story before the most important part. Do not step out of the process one moment before the manifestation, because everything that has been happening in the hidden place, every lesson, every formation, every painful and scared and invisible piece of it has been building to something that is almost ready to be seen. You are almost there. You are closer than think you realize. The ground is about to break open, and what emerges is going to be astonishing even you.